Hello and welcome back to the Atmosphere's Electric. There's Fran and Rich. How are you, dude?
Yeah, top drawer, you?
Well, you've just been off as before we were waiting for the record button to press. You were just telling me how well you did last week and how badly I did. So you got 7 out of 10 correct.
I don't know how you did, to be honest. I think you wouldn't have
Oh,
been
well.
too far behind me, but I mean, I got the first 3 wrong and then everything else correct. So it was more of a case of what could have been.
Well, we were getting excited during the Tuesday game when the Wolves game went 1-0 because we had it as a draw, and it very quickly disappeared when Manchester United came back and give Ipswich a bit of a shoe in, didn't they? Well, 3-2 and not 2-1 that we sort of spoke about. So, yeah, I think it's fair to say that was a much better week for you than I. But let's see how we get on this week. And actually, again, firstly, it's great to have a full weekend fixture list again. I missed last week. The FA Cup didn't quite hit the switches for me. I don't know about you, but I felt that the games were a little bit kind of flat and not quite, there was no real sort of massive games, was there really?
I couldn't agree more. I didn't really take a lot of notice of the FA Cup, if I'm being honest. Like I watched bits and bobs of it. Like it just didn't have any of my interest, if I'm being honest. Therefore, I was probably looking lower down the leagues at what was happening on some of the weekend games. But again, not too much interest. So yeah, great to have it back this weekend.
And there's some interesting fixtures, and obviously there's some interesting times as well. We've got early Saturday, late Saturday. We've got Monday night. We've got Sunday. So we've got lots to get through. Lots of exciting stuff going on. But it all kicks off at 12:30 at the City Ground, Nottingham, where Nottingham Forest host Manchester City. Now this is a really interesting way to start off our footballing weekend, isn't it?
It's got the potential to be a great game, hasn't it? Forest have had a little bit of a dip, but seem to have picked up again. Then Man City are definitely on the way up, aren't they? Seem to be scoring goals and have stopped conceding as many as they were. So, I mean, you'd like to think Man City have the edge on this, but the way that Forest have been playing, you just don't know, do you?
No, I think that's the interesting point. This is going to be, for me, the true acid test of actually where are Nottingham Forest right here, right now. They've had a phenomenal season. Of course they have, far above anybody's expectations. But like you say, it feels like it's starting to stutter. Even the FA Cup, although they went through, was a little bit, you would have expected them probably to beat Ipswich more comfortably. Obviously, the results have gone a little bit kind of south. But having said that, you could argue a 0-0 draw with Arsenal is still actually a very good result for Nottingham Forest. Maybe we're being a little bit harsh, but that's where their expectation is now, though, isn't it? We expect them to be winning home games now.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't think it was a bad result for them at all. Taking a point from Arsenal. Arsenal are still above them in the league. Yes, they didn't have a striker and don't look like scoring. Saying that, they put 7 past.
Caveat.
Or PSV, whoever it was the other day. But yeah, I mean, I think in the context of looking at the teams below them and other teams below them dropping points, a point against Arsenal isn't a bad result, is it? I think they would have definitely took that before the game kicked off.
No, but it just feels like, doesn't it? Like when you look at it when you just look at the X's and the O's or the W's and the L's, it looks like, over the last 5 games, they've won 1, drawn 1, lost 3. It feels like there's been, don't not forget an absolute shooing from Bournemouth. They lost to Fulham, obviously Newcastle. And again, Newcastle, we'll come to them later. It looked like they might be starting to struggle a little bit with numbers, but, it just feels like Nottingham Forest are on the downward slide. And of course, if Manchester City go there and win on Saturday, Manchester City leapfrog above them into 3rd place. So actually, there's quite a lot on the line here in this race for top 4, because actually, with Chelsea playing Leicester, and we'll come on to that later, and I'm sure we'll both come up with the same result, if not the same score. Actually, Nottingham Forest can see themselves as low as 5th by the end of this game week if they're not careful.
Yeah, they could do. Yeah, just like I said, with the other teams and their fixtures, I think this then does mean that it's a very important fixture for Forest. Again, similar to the Arsenal game, I think if you offer them a point now, they'll snap your hand off.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. I think you're probably right, based in the real world of where they are on the food chain. Obviously, Erling Haaland made a comeback in the last game against Spurs, scored the winner. Obviously, he does make a big difference to them, doesn't he? And actually, that for me is, feels like a million years ago before the Manchester City-Liverpool game, and we both felt that Manchester City had a chance, but we didn't know at that point that Erling Haaland wasn't going to be playing. We both said off the record that we might have changed our answer if we'd have known that beforehand. Having him back It's going to be really interesting for me to see the shootout between the two of the best centre forwards in the league, Erling Haaland versus Chris Wood. And I think that's where the game will be won and lost. The centre forward that takes their chances will win the game for their team.
Yeah, I agree. I think having Haaland back in the team as well, one obviously gives them a focal point, but he does seem to be building up a lovely little partnership with Marmoush. The partnership used to be De Bruyne and Haaland, didn't it? Marmoush seems to be taking the role of De Bruyne in a very different way, of course, but they seem to be linking together quite nicely. And it does seem that, again, Pep's tweaking his tactics. It looks like the two up front's coming back.
Yep.
Because, no club has played two up front for, I can't even remember the last team to play two up front. So it does seem to be that that's come back into football a little bit. Pep sort of reintroduced it. So, and I've always liked two up front. I think it's a great pair, and especially almost big and small, pacey. I know Haaland is pacey himself, but both got very different skill sets, haven't they? And I do think they link up quite nicely together.
There's definitely a lot more out of possession and in possession shapes, isn't there? Like teams have become much more fluid, and like you say, sort of against the press or pressing. 4-4-2 definitely looks like a much more of a common theme currently. It's amazing, isn't it, how one coach starts it and it then just sort of sweeps around Europe. And obviously this week we're looking at European football, and if you look carefully, you can see quite a lot of teams building up. Obviously we were speaking last night about PSG versus Liverpool and what an interesting sort of shape they put up there, both in and out of possession, and how good they looked against Liverpool. There's definitely lots of people who are going to follow that as it moves around Europe.
Yeah. Just on a side note, I've had a tenner on PSG to win the whole thing after last night. They've gone out to 16-1, and I think that's massive. I think they'll beat Liverpool. The way that they played, some of the players that they've got, to me, they've looked the best team in Europe, and I've seen them a few times now. They look phenomenal.
Well, what I did take from last night's game is that I think the winner of that plays the winner of Arsenal PSV. Yeah, well, you can put your money on whoever wins out of Liverpool PSG to go through to the next round because
100%. I was just looking at it, I thought 16-1 for a team. I know they're at home. It's going to be a different kettle of fish going to Anfield, but the way that they play, and then you look at the strength in depth on the bench as well. I was thinking, I fancy them to beat them, and it's 16-1 for the whole thing. I think it's only Real Madrid that could stop them.
Interesting. Obviously, we digress. I actually wonder whether playing away from home will suit that PSG side better, because Liverpool will have to come out a little bit.
Yeah.
And on the break with Dembele, Doué, Bacola, like whoever you want to, Kvaratskhelia, they're going to be an absolute. I did that quite well, to be fair. I can see your face going. Let's see how he tackles this one. He can't get Liam Delap right, but he can get. Like, I saw your face literally go. He's going to do it. He's going to do it. Oh, he did it.
Again, side note, you can pronounce his name, but why on earth somebody? This is what I sent to you yesterday. Why did somebody in England, a club in England, not purchase him? He is top draw.
Well, Man City, right? Who we're talking about? Yeah. He would have absolutely revolutionised. Potentially, you could argue they'd still be in the Champions League if they'd made that purchase.
Yeah, absolute no-brainer. 70 million, that is a snippet. I looked at it, he's 24 as well, so he's not like he's 28. He's young, and the way he glides with the ball.
Yep.
He's pacey, but he's not rapid. But the way he glides with the ball, what a player he is. They've missed a right trick there. PSG landed themselves an unbelievable player.
They've actually got an unbelievable squad. I was looking at Nuno Mendes, Vitinha.
He had a good game.
They just look like, actually, compared to when the glory days of Messi, Neymar, etc., they look like a proper outfit. They look like a proper team. They ran their absolute socks off. Pressing man for man. I didn't manage to catch much of the first half because I was being a parent. But second half, I thought the only mistake they made, their shots were from too far, like they were almost too keen to shoot. And it was from the edge of the area rather than trying to get that little bit. But I thought they were absolutely spectacular.
Yeah, I agree. And that's I stuck a 10 on them. Fancy it.
Well, I'm not quite sure how we got to PSG Liverpool from Nottingham Forest Manchester City, but there we go. That's how we roll. Looking forward to finding out what we think about that. But you're right about that. Oh, that was the link, wasn't it, between Marmoush and Erling Haaland? I think this Manchester City squad is starting to look sort of back to its kind of former glory, isn't it? Where you lose a player, but you're just bringing somebody else back in. And I think, we spoke about this lots and lots, but I think this summer's going to be really interesting. And, you look at someone like Jack Grealish, who, I know he's been in and out of injury, etc. And I think he might still have a bit of it. But, I don't see Jack Grealish playing for Manchester City again.
No, there's a few of them, isn't there, as well? Gundogan looks, when he came back in, we said he looked like his legs have gone. There's going to be a few of them. De Bruyne is one that they might need to shift on as well. And I've heard rumours saying he's happy to accept a reduced role, but he's still quality on the ball. It's just the off-the-ball stuff, isn't it? And Yeah, and going on to Grealish, I'd love to see him move to another club because I do feel that Pep has completely sort of put a break on all of his attributes of where he dribbles with the ball.
Yeah.
Now, I'd take a few points to say, it's obviously Grealish has to take some of the blame as well because you've got people like Doku who still have the ability and drive to run at people. So I think Grealish does have to take some, but the formation and the way that City played previously, it does seem to have had a knock-on effect. So I would like to see Grealish get a move to a club where they're going to utilise him, probably in the number 10 role, so he can utilise his dribbling skills again because that was his main asset.
Yeah, I think, as I say regularly, I think this summer's going to be really fascinating across the board. Jack Grealish is one that I'd be very surprised. And like you say, the De Bruyne kind of, you can almost feel it, can't you? But game by game, the baton being handed to Marmoush, as you said. And it's almost like they're going, you're going to take us on to the next generation of where we're going to be. And it's going to be an interesting sort of transition over the summer for Manchester City.
Strange that though, isn't it? Because if you'd have said a year ago, 18 months ago, who's the natural successor to De Bruyne, it was Foden. He's almost a forgotten man at the minute, Foden, isn't he?
Yeah, again, going back to a conversation I have quite regularly, is that if you go back to last summer and the England squad and look at how many of those players that were, absolutely bang on form this time last year that are nowhere near what they were doing last year, currently, it's quite scary, really. If you look at how out of form that England squad from the summer is, it's weird.
I can't think of one player who's probably, with the exception of Anthony Gordon, who was in the squad but didn't really feature, who's had a good season. I can't think of somebody off the top of my head who was in that England squad. Probably Pickford.
Yeah, there you go. That's exactly what I was about to say. You'd say Pickford is there or thereabouts. But the rest of it, I mean, Kyle Walker out in Italy hasn't exactly kind of torn up any trees. John Stones can't, buy a hamstring, can he? I mean, the guy is more injured than me. It's the midfield, Declan Rice, not quite at the level, like it just across the. And
Trippier doesn't even get a game these days. He will now, but.
Well, yeah, he might do. Yeah, like I said, it's just interesting for me how whether it is the emotional impact of that, whether it's just pure luck or fluke or what, I don't know. But genuinely, you look at that squad from last summer and you think about how excited we were about all of the players, and you look at you look at the goals that Foden was scoring this time last year. It was almost like Manchester City 1-0, Foden the scorer. And you just said that he's absolutely kind of irrelevant, like almost. Obviously Bellingham's injured. Kobe Mainu isn't doing what he did. Luke Shaw hasn't played since.
Kobe Mainu, what has happened to him?
So it's just like he was the next big thing, and we're now talking about Angel Gomez being in there. Like it's just a really weird kind of 12 months of
Ollie Watkins hasn't really done what he did last season. It's really strange.
Blimey, we are bouncing around today, aren't we? Okay.
This is what no Premier League last week does to you.
It's like,
allows you to open up other avenues.
Another really interesting game at the American Express Stadium is Brighton versus Fulham. Brighton have it's gone under the radar. We spoke about it, but have really bounced back well, haven't they, from that heavy defeat against Nottingham Forest? And actually, for me, the real stamp on that, beating Chelsea is always a good result, of course. You expect to beat Southampton, maybe not 4-0, but going and beating Bournemouth was the stamp of actually Brighton are here to stay for me now, and actually level on points with Brighton, 1 point behind Newcastle, 3 behind Chelsea. They're right bang in the mix. And this is the game that they'll probably fancy themselves to win at home against the Fulham side, who, to be fair, are actually very good away from home. But you would say that Brighton are slight favourites here, wouldn't you?
Yeah, I think Brighton will win the game. Fulham are quite hard to predict, whereas Brighton, of the past few games, have been super consistent, haven't they? They've scored goals. Their wingers look a threat. Danny Welbeck is back again, scoring goals. So, I think you'd have to say, at home, Brighton are favourites.
And kind of reversing the conversation, how impressed have you been with the Brighton? Because again, I feel like kind of he came in this blaze of glory. I don't even know, he was quite young, and then of course they wanted him out because they'd lost a couple of games, and now we're talking about Brighton being right slap back bang in the Champions League mix. Remember, top 5 qualifiers. So I'm not suggesting they're going to, by the way, but they're in the mix. How impressed have you been with just how calm he is, just how he's kept that team? And they seem to be growing with him, don't they? Every week, Brighton seem to understand a little bit more about what he's asking for, and they're in a really, really good spot.
I am not. So I've heard from the Brighton fans that he has been adapting, and I think that's exactly what you want to hear from or see from your manager of your club is that they're adaptable, that they don't just have one singular shape or style of play, and that they can adapt. However, I don't know how much you can attribute that down to the manager, because I know that January has come and Brighton purchased a few players. One of them, I think, was a guy from the MLS. Can't remember his name, but he comes in and he looks a phenomenal player. So I don't know whether it's just that they've had their squad boosted with a few injuries returning, and also a couple of players that have been bought that do look really good. And I don't know whether it's just the Brighton structure that is allowing him to flourish, or whether it is that he's being, he's a good manager. I'm not saying he's not a good manager, but he's a good manager and he's adapting and he's learning on the job. I hope that it's a little bit of both, really, because then that really does show good signs for Brighton and for the future. My concern would be that it's just that Brighton setup is one of the best in the league. The scouting, some of the players they're bringing in, and when they're getting their injuries back, they have got a hell of a squad. So I don't really know where to pinpoint it. So I'm probably going to keep my powder dry for a couple more weeks until I can see a bit more evidence. But positive signs, regardless of where it is, the here and now, they look really good.
And while we're there, Fulham are only a point further back. Both teams are above Aston Villa, for example, that you wouldn't have had at the start of the season. If Fulham go on to win this, that puts them obviously on 45, which potentially takes them above Newcastle. Right back in the mix. So this is actually going to be a very, very interesting game for the shape of both teams, isn't it? Because actually, if one of them wins, there's going to be put some distance between them, and actually could really move their season forward. And I think we spoke last week about Fulham being on the beach, but actually maybe a bit early, because if they could win at Brighton, that would really put them right back in the mix, wouldn't it?
Yeah, and obviously going out the FA Cup will go out the FA Cup. Yeah,
Fulham on penalties.
Yeah, did they win?
Fulham won.
Fulham won. Oh, so they're not out. Yeah. So I was going to say going out the FA Cup means that they'll just have the league to focus on. So it might be something to think about. They're in the FA Cup, so they've obviously might have their ideas on, because it's quite an open FA Cup. Might have their ideas on silverware, so it might mean that they are more on the beach. But like you said, a win takes them all the way up into near the Champions League places. So you'd like to think that they could try and fight on two fronts. I just don't think they've got enough. They're too hit and miss for me, Fulham. So if you ask me where I'd be going home win. But they are very hit and miss, and when they're good, they're very good, Fulham.
Yeah, well, and of course that's what we will be doing later, Fran. You don't need to spoil the fun. There's no reason to listen now. If you're a Brighton or a Fulham fan, you're done. You know that Fran, the top tipster, has decided that Brighton are going to win.
I get the first three wrong, so...
He's not bitter, everybody. He definitely is bitter still. But again, you mentioned Danny Welbeck earlier. I think, again, we have to kind of just... for want of a better phrase, give a shout out to the man that I feel like he's like 147. But, even in the FA Cup at the weekend, that goal he scored, if I tried to do that, I think I would have pulled 2 hamstrings, 3 hernias and a groin. Great goal to win it for Brighton. He's doing great things, and he must be such a, they've still got James Milner around the squad. Those young players coming through have got 2 absolutely inspirational leaders, haven't they, ahead of them to show you what is capable if you look after yourself.
Definitely. And here's a question: would he start up front for Manchester United right now?
I think you and I would start up front for Manchester United.
But it just shows, though, doesn't it? I mean, for how many years ago he used to play for Manchester United and was ridiculed, if we're being honest, to now some of the players that they've got. I think it just shows some of the, especially the levels. He was ridiculed as the main number 9 for Manchester United, and now he would walk into their team at his age.
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely. Completely agree. It's fascinating, isn't it, how much movement takes place when actually, if you'd have kept what you had to start with, you might have been better off. A lesson for everybody there. And there's many of those lessons, of course, across football very, very regularly. We move to Selhurst Park, where Crystal Palace host Ipswich. I think we can't move on without talking about the assault on Mateta last week. Now, I think what we don't need to talk about whether it's a good tackle, bad tackle. I think we can safely say it wasn't the best. But what I am slightly concerned about is the desire to elongate the ban, as if the goalkeeper meant to kill him.
That was, I don't think he meant to hurt him, did he? I think it's been taken so out of context, saying it's the worst tackle I've ever seen. It was a bad tackle, but I think he went for the ball. I don't think he went to go and hurt Mateta. It was just an accident. Yes, it was dangerous, and he deserved to be sent off, but he doesn't deserve to be banned for life, like some of the things have been said. Have I ever seen the flip side of Joe Barton saying that Mateta should basically man up and that it's a contact sport? it's a contact sport, but not 6 studs in your head.
Yeah, but obviously it's a bad tackle. But I just worry that, so like if I do a tackle and I break your leg, is that what, like, and it was just a 50-50, like, I just think that we have to be careful of the, if I punch you in the face in a fight, that might be different. But like, he went for the ball, albeit not a great attempt at the ball. I just think that if we then start saying, this bad tackle is worth a 10-game ban, this bad tackle is worth a 3-game ban, where do you end? And actually, is it based on the injury that comes off the back of it?
That's it. He could have gone and kicked the ball and fresh aired it by accident and just cleaned him out, and he could have given a foul. But actually, just because it hit his head, the outcome, yes, he's had some stitches. That's just an accidental outcome of what happened. Like, it should just be punished by the level of the tackle.
I don't want to throw my son under the bus, but he went, it's not even a foul. First time he saw it, he went and got the ball.
I heard a lot of good things about Aston at the trial day the other day. I mean, if that's what he thinks, I don't think he's not on the plane. I don't think.
He said he got the ball. Like, he's a bit old school. Like, that's obviously a change.
I like that though. Rather than this, soft footballers that we've got these days. Play on.
By the way, coming from a fancy down winger, he'd have a different. If you see him when he goes down when someone tackles
him, if it was on him, he'd have had a different opinion.
he's got this noise he makes as they tackle him. He's like, it's oi! And then he goes down to try and get the free kick. It makes me laugh every time, and I have to run on and pretend he's injured because obviously we have to get. Anyway, we move on. Crystal Palace, probably without Mateta would be my guess. Actually, though, on a serious note, makes a big difference to that Palace team, doesn't it? Because actually, with him, I think you kind of go all in on Crystal Palace. Without him, though, actually, this becomes a closer game, doesn't it?
I think the only thing is, Nketiah came on. I'm sure he scored, didn't he? So he might have a bit of confidence. So they do have a striker, like you said, though. It's just not of the level of what Mateta has become, which is unbelievable to say. 18 months ago, he was an absolute donkey, wasn't he? But yeah, I mean, I don't even know. Is he out? I know that they've said he's got stitches in his ear, so he might be available. But again, going back to the Haaland Man City thing, it does make you think. And you say, I've wrote a score down, but if he wasn't available, I'd be probably changing my score.
Yeah, so he's marked as being out currently, but again, as we all know, that's not necessarily the case. I'm not sure whether there was any kind of concussion protocol that had to go through because it was a head injury. So not sure is the honest answer. But again, looking at Ipswich and kind of I got to look at them quite closely on Monday night because there was no other football really to kind of watch. So we, in my house, watched Nottingham Forest versus Ipswich. And I saw some pretty good signs, and I thought actually, I'm going to go for it straight away. Liam Delap is making a name for himself as someone that actually is a bit of an all-action hero, isn't he? He throws himself around. I can see him causing Crystal Palace some problems, and it wouldn't surprise me if this was a both teams to score type of a result, with it being tighter than we probably would think.
I think on the relegation front, Ipswich have what the rest of the teams around them don't have, is a superstar that can score goals and effectively drag them out of it. I don't think they will, because I think the rest of the team's good enough. But that's what they're pinning their hopes on. Be like what Wolves have done with Cunha, and he's now suspended. So, I mean, that's going to be their hope, is that he can effectively win them enough points. But he's good enough to do it in games, and this is the sort of game that they need to target, especially if Mateta's out. It's a bit of a lifeline for them. They need to be targeting that, and he's the man that can do it. He's a very good player. He won't be there next season, let's be honest as well.
Definitely won't be there next season. It doesn't matter what league they're in, he won't be there next season, that's for sure. I know for a fact that there's some what would see themselves as big six teams circling. But when you look at the last 5 Ipswich games, they've played Manchester United, they've played Tottenham, they've played Aston Villa, they've played Liverpool, and the one that stands out is that defeat to Southampton. But you wouldn't really expect them to get too many points from those fixtures. You would have said 3 points against Southampton, they end up getting 1. This feels like, and again, not doing any disrespect to Crystal Palace, are actually doing really, really well and putting together a nice little run themselves. Ipswich will be looking, at the start of the season when you look at potential points, and I'm not suggesting 3, but points. This might be one that they mark down as an opportunity, especially if Crystal Palace aren't at full strength.
It's definitely one, especially, pre sort of the early season of the Premier League is when you were looking at the way Palace were playing. Now it's just a bit of a different kettle of fish, aren't they? They are on a roll themselves. They've picked up some good form. So, and with Palace being at home, it makes it even more difficult. But like you said, they're going to have to, games are running out. They're going to have to start picking up points. So it would be one that they'd be targeting. And now you put the context of Mateta possibly being out. They've definitely got to be targeting a point minimum from this game, or else it does just seem to be the Wolves are running away with the relegation battle.
having said that, we'll come on to it in a minute, of course, but I think Wolves missing Cunha could take some backward steps, and again, not got an easy fixture this weekend where maybe my banker of the weekend might be in. We never know. Because obviously the next game should be everybody's banker of the week, but it seems almost pointless to bother saying it's the banker of the week. So Liverpool host Southampton at Anfield. I'm going to try and say that they got the run around last night, and therefore, to have a 3:00 Saturday kickoff, Liverpool could come back fatigued, a little bit bruised, battered, and that gives Southampton a chance of nicking something.
No chance.
Okay, I tried.
No chance. They are the worst team in the league alongside Leicester. Both of them are. So I don't think there's any... I'm not saying one or the other is. I think they both are. I did think Southampton was starting to prove, but then there's rumours coming out saying that the manager has fell out with the players. Those two, Leicester, start to just going down with a whimper. No fight in the team. Both games, I can't see how they score. They're just going to get battered. So, I don't think there needs to be a lot of discussion. I think they could actually rest quite a few players. Liverpool rest a few players, give probably someone like Chiesa a game and stuff. Like, I just can't see how Southampton are going to get anything, score a goal, get in their half from this game.
But I think that is an interesting point, actually, because you've and if we kind of wrap that back into the conversation we had earlier, and you think that PSG could go to Anfield and win next week and therefore qualify, there is a chance that Liverpool rotate. They're probably going to see this as a bit of a free hit, right? They feel like a bit of an FA Cup type of team that they put out against Plymouth, because they are obviously, albeit with a game in hand, sort of 13 points clear. So imagine, let's say, assume Arsenal win that, they're 10 points clear. If they did rest a bunch of players and got a draw at home, but as long as they go through against PSG, that would be, in the next 7 days, that's Liverpool's focus, isn't it? So there is a chance that with a Chiesa, with a, without Salah, without, Cody Gakpo wasn't in the squad, they could rest a few and potentially then create a bit of a problem for themselves.
Yeah, I think the only difference with that and the Plymouth game is that when you looked at the bench, there wasn't anything, was there? Whereas Liverpool are at home, so that if they do rest Salah, as an example, he will be on the bench. So if it is 0-0 after 40, 50, 60 minutes, then 5 players will come on, and that will just be too much for Southampton to contain. So I don't think the result is up for debate. It's probably just the amount of goals. Like you said, if they do rest a lot of players, it might be 0-0 for 30 minutes, but I can't see. Even their reserve players are going to have far too much for Southampton.
I tried, mate. I didn't mean it. I didn't think it's possible.
I try to be as positive as well for some of the. I just can't see any positives for Southampton and Leicester. Like, they both just look absolutely done. One of the worst teams to grace the Premier League in years. That's just what Southampton are fighting for, to be honest. Is just not to break Derby's record.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, absolutely. And that win against Ipswich, I think, probably might just get them certainly closer than we thought.
But do you want it like? I can't see where either Southampton or Leicester win any game for the rest of the season.
Yeah, it's getting harder and harder as weeks go by to make a case for either of them, and that they are conceding a load of goals. I mean, Southampton have, on average over the last sort of 5 games, the games they've lost, losing to 3. Leicester have started chipping in, like you say. Leicester don't score, so actually, the minute you score 1 against Leicester, you can pretty much, you could argue banker at the weekend would be Chelsea to 0, right?
Very good.
There we go. Chelsea to 0. It's like I've spoken to you before, Frank.
I've got something very similar. It's not that, but it's very, very similar.
Yeah, well, what I'm not doing ever again is bloody goals, shots, corners, and
I will be back in that every single week, because generally it comes in.
Yeah, well, the 1 week I do it, bloody West Ham down tools after whatever the score was, 2-0, 3-0. Anyway, I think we've dragged Liverpool beating Southampton out as long as we can. It's just a case of how, again, to be honest, that might be another 2-0. It might be worth chucking them both in as an interesting conversation. 5:30 Saturday night. Surely now, so speaking candidly, Fran, surely now Aston Villa bin this game off because they've put themselves in a really, really strong position to go through to the next round of the Champions League, and surely that is their focus now.
I would have agreed with you, but when I look at the table, they've played a game more than the other teams, but they are only 4 points off 5th. So they're still in with the automatic qualification as well as that. So I don't think that they completely bin it off. But I mean, Brentford are a good side, so I think this has got the potential to be a good game. And like we said before, Villa, after a European fixture generally aren't very good.
Well, I'd throw in the FA Cup as a.
Mm-hmm.
I've lost my pen. I've lost my pen. When you look at what Aston Villa have got a realistic chance of playing for this season, the FA Cup they've had. You could argue, obviously, sort of knocking Spurs out has enabled them to have a relatively comfortable run to the, I think it'd be the semi-finals.
They drew. Is it something?
Preston.
Yeah, Preston. Yeah, they've got the dream draw as well. So yeah, you're right. That would be on their minds as well.
So I just want, and looking at this league table that we've spoken about, with the Fulhams, the Brightons, the Nottingham Forests, the Newcastles, the Chelseas, I don't see, being honest with you, Aston Villa climbing above all of those into fifth place. I think they might get above some of them, but I just feel that there's just too many teams above them.
No, I'd agree. I don't think they will. But when you look at it from just a sheer points perspective, they're not that far behind. But no, I agree with you. I don't think they are good enough to make the top 4/5. They've just not been anywhere near as consistent as they were last season, have they?
No, but that's okay because again, like it's different when you're playing in Europe and when you're playing in the and Aston Villa got off to a good start. Bayern Munich, they've had some great nights, and you just got to think actually. Maybe for once it'd be great if a club went, do you know what? We're not going to worry about that race for top 5. We're going to go all in on winning. We're going to give our fans that moment of, there's a trophy above our heads, because that's really what the fans, if
it's what you support football for, is to win something.
Do you know what I mean? I've never kind of gone down the streets jumping around and getting excited when my team's finishing third to qualify for a European competition, but I do remember every FA Cup, every league, so I just think that actually, if Aston Villa focus on those two competitions, finishing in the league where you finish, and by the way, have a run and you might do all right. But just for me, this feels like this is a bit of a banana skin, and actually, I can really see Brentford giving Aston Villa a hard time here.
I think it's a banana skin, and like you said, it's why also fans support and watch football is to win something. So yeah, anyone who's given me stick recently, give your head a wobble. It's about winning things, not finishing fourth.
Yeah, give your head a wobble, whoever you are, giving France stick. How dare you?
Yeah.
And obviously, Brentford are a team that again, if we're speaking about Aston Villa looking up the table, Brentford need to be doing the same. They're not, they're literally, a couple of points behind them. If they were to beat them at the weekend, they'd be 1 point behind them. They've won 3 of their last 5 with some good results in there. Brentford needs to be looking up and actually, looking at maybe that lower level European football opportunity. And again, the job that Thomas Frank's doing there goes under the radar. This for me is a really, really interesting Saturday night game that could go either way.
And do you know what else is really important when you look at the league? And I'm going to name a few clubs here: Bournemouth, Brighton, Fulham, Brentford, Palace. You'd say they're all not lesser clubs, but they're smaller clubs than teams like your Chelsea, Man City. Yeah. Finishing that extra place, 2 places higher, it's the equivalent to £5 to £10 million difference. So then, therefore, you put that into PSR perspectives, you got a bit more wiggle room that you might be able to afford the next level of player, wages, those sorts of things. So it is really important. So Brentford definitely need to be focusing as much as they can on the league, because in those extra couple of places just might mean a little bit more wiggle room for PSR.
Absolutely. And again, we keep talking about the summer, and both teams are going to have a very, very interesting journey. And again, for Brentford, I think they could lose Mbeumo, who still is only 25, can't believe it, and Vissa. Actually, it could be a really, really interesting window. And maybe this becomes the end of the Thomas Frank experiment, because actually, I think if there's any team in the Premier League that does decide to change managers, he'd have to be in the equation for almost all of them.
I'm still amazed how somebody hasn't gone all in. There's been rumours, every job that comes out, has been rumours that he's linked to them, but nobody's ever really gone all in it, and I'm amazed that hasn't happened yet.
Yeah, I think this is going to be a really, like I keep saying, interesting. Brentford fans create a good atmosphere in the stadium. I think that this could be a real bit of a humdinger, a bit of a. I'm going to go, over 2.5 goals here for me. I think this could be a really interesting Saturday night affair, which is actually, I'm looking forward to all of the games on telly this weekend. I think they've got something to be interested about, and could open up a really interesting weekend of watching some great football.
Yeah, hopefully. Well, judging by my predictions, I've got quite a few goals going in. So, yeah, agreed.
Well, although I have just done the win to nil, Liverpool and Chelsea, it's 16-5. Not going to change your life.
No.
unless you put £5,000 on it. Don't do that, anybody. They're stupid, crazy. He's got £5,000 anyway. With the amount of money I've given to the bookies in his bloody £5 challenge I might have had. We finished Saturday at Molineux, 8 o'clock kickoff. Wolves host Everton. This is my risky banker of the week, Fran. I think Everton win this game. I think that Wolves are going to be a little bit powder puff, and Everton with that renewed kind of defensive structure as well as the attacking flair that's starting to come through. I think this is an away win all day long.
I have it down as an away win. I wouldn't probably go as far as saying it was a banker, but obviously with the Cunha suspension, they are very light up front without him. They don't have a lot of creativity. They're heavily reliant on him. So no, I agree with you. I think it has got an Everton win all over it. And I've got the balls to give it as my banker though.
Do we need to talk about Cunha as a problem? Because actually, that's another sending off.
So you mentioned a few weeks ago that we now know the price that Wolves will accept to get Cunha out of there. With how petulant and childish he is a top team going to risk it? Because it's twice this season he's kicked off in a way which has been unbelievable. Which, if we're being honest, he could have been banned for 10 games on both occasions for what he's done. He's got away with it quite lightly both times. So as good a player as he is, it might start putting off teams, like when Arsenal were interested in him, to go, can we really rely on someone like that? When you need him, he's going to get sent off, get banned for 5-10 games. Like, it might be starting to put people off.
Yeah, I think he needs to be careful. His stock was very high from a footballing point of view, and we spoke about potentially him being the answer to a lot of teams' problems in January, and there was talk of it, being an option in January. If a week is a long time in politics, a week's also a long time in football, and I just think he's starting to become. I don't know whether it's the management style, but having said that, it's been under various managers, under both managers. He's been a petulant problem. Whether he thinks he's too good for the club, I don't know. Whether he went to an Arsenal around other players, he might wind his neck in. But I just think he's got to be very, very careful now, because if he's playing for a move, his behaviour is potentially going to cost him the club that he wants to go to.
I'd agree, and also from a Wolves perspective, it might be lowering that transfer fee. So both sides of things. I think the club need to get hold of him, and he needs to get hold of himself, because he might just be playing himself out of a transfer.
What I will say, though, is they've been clever in the sense that it seems that there's now a buyout clause in the contract. It means that they've secured that, haven't they, in terms of they don't have to accept anything beneath that number. Now, of course, if nobody offers it and they want to shift him on, they might have to renegotiate that and take a lower fee. But ultimately, I do still think there'll be, and let's be honest, I don't know what Manchester United's financial position is going to be like in the summer, but you could see Man United sort of panic buying him because they can't get anybody else. So someone will have him. It's just he needs to be very careful and get his head down. And by the way, really keep Wolves in the Premier League. That's really what he should be focused on now, because actually with his in the team, we wouldn't be quite so confident Everton are going to win that game.
On the Man United thing, would you go from Wolves to Man United at the minute? You would for cash.
And therefore, then we know that that's kind of what moves the dial, isn't it? It's like you say, and also I'm going to say, I think next season, surely Manchester United have to fix in the summer the shape and the players to fit the shape. So surely just by that logic alone, they've got to be 10% better next season, just by having the right players to play the system that the manager wants.
You'd think so, clearing players out and getting new players in, getting them into a formation style. But like you said, I think one of the main reasons that Manchester United are as bad as they are is they've been signing players probably for the name and not going, signing them because of their attitude. And then you look at Cunha and say, does he fit into the style of the personality of player that you would want to try and rebuild a club of that size? And with his petulance and childish behaviours of Rita, I wouldn't be going anywhere near him for Manchester United. I think he's completely, personality-wise, the wrong fit. Ability-wise, don't get me wrong, he's a brilliant player, but I'd be looking for more leaders and better characters to be putting into that squad, and that he doesn't fit that bill for me.
No, I get it. Like I say, I think he's just in danger of becoming a problem. But like I say, he's on essentially, allegedly, he's on $60,000 a week. So I think Manchester United could double that comfortably, and that would be enough to make them become part of the conversation for where he goes. And of course,
on the Wolves front, We both think that Everton could win the game. Do Wolves then stay up? I think they're still, even without Cunha, I still think they've got far too much for Ipswich.
Yeah, I can't see at the moment, mate. I can't see anything that changes the bottom three. I can't see anything that changes the bottom three at the moment. It would take a massive drop off, and I think the trouble now is that with that, if it was 17 and 19, it's a one game swing.
That's where it is for me. Is even with a couple of half decent draws here and there, you're still miles off, and all it takes is Wolves, 4 or 5 games without Cunha to come back and they win one. They're still too far ahead, so I just think they've got too much.
What I would also say is next game week. So I don't think it is actually next week, is it? Because I think there's an international break. I can't.
Got a very kind run in the next 4 or 5 games.
Well, they've got Southampton to start with.
Yeah.
So beat Southampton, and then you've got Ipswich.
Yeah.
So those 2 games become, let's be honest, absolutely freaking massive. Win both of them, and you're done.
Yeah, it's done. Well, might even just be win one, especially if you beat Ipswich. Yeah.
Because the point is that you're also then putting a gap between them because they're losing points. So and as we've said, Ipswich. I don't see Ipswich getting 6 more points than Wolves between now and the end of the season. Bearing in mind they have to play each other. Having said that, if Ipswich were to beat Wolves, that would make life down there a little bit more interesting. But it's definitely in Wolves. Obviously, definitely in Wolves' hands. And of course, the great thing about Everton is that we are not really talking about them because they're safe, they're done, they've had a great turnaround, and looking forward to the next season with a new stadium. I'm hearing through the grapevine, although I did actually, I did reach out to some people that know some people, and they said to me, "Don't believe everything you read in the papers about what's going on at Everton." I'll leave it there for the time being. Looks like they're making some good decisions behind the scenes as well, and actually, really set themselves up for future success. So I think it's a very exciting time to be an Everton fan.
For a change for them, I mean, for quite a long while, they've had to put up with some proper shit, haven't they? For being honest, it's been dreadful performances, some dreadful signings. Players doing some strange things. In Gylfi Sigurdsson's case, like this, they've had to put up with some random stuff and some poor performances, poor management of the club. So I think if any club in the Premier League at the minute does deserve a nice bit of fortune, luck, or just a change of pace, it probably is the Everton fans. So no, I think it's really good for the traditional Premier League club, aren't they? So it's nice to see them on the up and moving into a new stadium and looking positive.
I'll be interested to see what they're doing again. Mentioning the summer again, I think they could be a problem for some teams. Obviously, if they can keep hold of their players, Brantwaite. Obviously, a lot of clubs are sniffing around. It'd be very interesting to see how they finance that and what they do with that information. But yeah, I guess the best compliment we can pay Everton is that they're for this stage absolutely safe and therefore not particularly a concern.
Yeah. The best compliment is they've now become irrelevant in the season.
Yeah. Completely. Yeah, completely irrelevant. They can be on the beach. We know the outcome. Chelsea host Leicester at Stamford Bridge, 2:00 kickoff, home win to 0. Can you make any case for any different result? Chelsea obviously playing on Thursday in the Europe. Thursday, Sunday's not great. Obviously, Chelsea themselves are having a little bit of a run that's kind of making people scratch their heads in terms of how they've fallen off as far as they have. Having said that, of course, they ended up, again, I kind of feel bad by saying this, but beating Southampton doesn't really feel like an upturn in form. You just kind of should do that as you do. But actually, Chelsea are now as more inconsistent than they were this time last year, if I'm being honest.
Yeah, I mean, the only thing you can say about that Southampton game was it 4-0, I think it was? Yep. That's going to boost your confidence, isn't it? Multiple scorers on. I mean, the only thing that didn't come out of that game was Cole Palmer had a mare again.
Yep.
That's the only thing you can say at the minute about Chelsea is their main player looks completely out of sorts. But, a bit of a break for him. So hopefully he'll come back rejuvenated. I just can't see anything other than an absolute tanking here, if I'm being honest. I can't see Chelsea look a bit shaky at the back, but I can't see how Leicester hurt them. Van Nistelrooy continues to pick the same 11. It's very rare that he rotates, and therefore the players that they've got haven't got any pace, so they're not going to harm Chelsea. I can just see total domination of the ball in a Maresca style, and I can just see their forwards helping themselves to goals through stupid defensive mistakes. So 2 games for Maresca to save his job. He couldn't have asked for 2 better teams to have played to boost the confidence and probably get back in a bit of form.
Yeah, again, it's another one of those, isn't it? Where I think we just all need to get a little bit of a grip on ourselves, as a collective group of football fans, to sort of say, at the start of the season, when all of that noise was happening, when we were all, everyone was, all of the memes were going around about, you could have like a 10,000 stadium. It's like, oh, this is Chelsea's warm up, like they were the laughing stock. They've had some ups and downs, but they're fifth. There's no noise coming out of Chelsea in terms of the behaviour. The ownership's gone quiet. They've got loads of players out on loan. If they just jiggle themselves this summer, they're in a pretty decent spot. Yeah, I know it's not great at the moment, but again, if we look at Brighton, 2 months ago they were calling for the Brighton boss to be sacked. Iriola nearly got sacked at Bournemouth early doors because I think we just need to chill out and give them a chance, don't we?
I think so. I've watched a lot of Maresca, and I think he is an elite coach. I say coach, not manager. I think, the way that he can coach people and squads and tactics and styles of play, I think he is an elite coach. He's still a very inexperienced manager. He is learning on the job, but that's exactly why he was recruited.
Yep.
They've gone down the route of hiring top coaches and it just hasn't worked. So they've gone for somebody who can build something, a project manager. And I really do like what they're doing. I agree with you. I think they need to give him time to say, I think Maresca's done a good job there. He's brought a brand of football. Yes, sometimes it can be a little boring, but he's still getting players on board. He's having to, like you said, shuffle 15 players out of the squad. So it has been a continual evolution. I think it just needs a little bit more time. Another window, which again sounds funny when you say how many players are signed, but they're still having to shift a lot of deadwood out. So get some of that out, get a few of the players that he wants in the squad. I do think it is positive. They just need to stick with him. So, and I think this run is going to help, though. A couple of wins, Southampton and Leicester, that'll put them back on with a bit of form, a bit of confidence, and they can go from there.
I think they have got some players that's going to be. I don't see where Raheem Sterling goes from here. as an example. Obviously, João Felix is on loan. He looks okay at Milan, but not exactly kind of scoring week in, week out. Disasi at Aston Villa. They've got lots of people out on loan who aren't exactly. What you really hope for a loan is obviously that they go and tear up. And so therefore then everyone's clamoring over them to sign them. But I just think based on the wages that Chelsea have been dishing out as well, that they are going to create a bottleneck for themselves.
Yeah. Well, you've got Mudryk as well, haven't you? I know he's in a drugs ban, is it?
Yeah.
Yeah, but you've got him. He's on a 10-year deal or something. He's probably 3 years into that. There's quite a few of them, isn't there? And I've seen a lot of rumours that Chelsea are after Matoma. We should just leave Brighton alone, by the way. But if they brought him in, how are they going to shift some of the players that they've got in and around that squad? I've seen a lot of them are upset with Madueke. Don't think he's quite good enough. So, yeah, it does need a bit more shuffling, but he can only do so much within two windows, can't he? They are restricted by what they can do.
By the way, I completely agree with the Madueke's not good enough. I said that from the minute they signed him. I thought it was not a Chelsea. But anyway, again, happy. I'd love to be wrong, but don't think I am. I'm afraid. I think Madueke is not quite at Chelsea where they want to go to.
Yeah, just on that. So Chelsea are my banker of the week. I've put them in a bet builder, so I've got Chelsea to win and over 2.5 goals for Chelsea.
Ooh, 2.5 goals for Chelsea.
For Chelsea, not in the game.
What does that kick out at?
It's 3-4, so it's near enough even money. So it's not the biggest of prices, but if you add that with your bank of the week, Everton at 19-10, it equates to just over 4-1.
Let me be the one binging up the odds while you come with your little easy ones. I'm joking. It's got to come, friend.
Last week we won the banker of the week, both of us again, so that's twice now that we've both doubled up. So.
Yep.
The £5 challenge might not be going great, but the banker of the week has been coming in. So, and I can tell you what the odds of last week's was as well. It was even. It was even money with West Ham and Chelsea. So if you'd have had £10 on that, you'd won 20. So not doing too bad. 4-1, even money, and another 4-1. So
we're doing all right. We're doing all right. As are Bournemouth, who go to the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium at the same time on Sunday. This one is live on Sky Sports, and actually, I think this could be. One of the, and for a whole bunch of reasons, one of the most interesting and entertaining games of the weekend. Frank, I don't know about you.
Yeah, I mean, Spurs have obviously got a lot of players back and seem to be on the way up. I just think Bournemouth have peaked and are just slightly on the decline. They've got a lot of injuries and suspension now. They lost they had Zabani sent off, didn't they? So that I think is just going to hurt them. But from an actual game perspective, I can see goals in this. I think this is a really good game. But I do think that, where we were judging Bournemouth a couple of weeks ago, really on the crest of a wave, I think they are just starting to fall off their edge now.
I see that. Obviously, losing to Brighton's not great. They've lost 2 on the bounce. Now, obviously, losing to Wolves was in fact, they've lost 3 or 4. But again, Liverpool will let them have that one.
I think it's just what happened to Spurs, though. I think it's a very similar sort of story where they've had the injuries, but and it's starting to affect them now. You put into that with the suspensions that they've got as well. I just think it's starting to affect them where they did really well to hold that football, to build the form. I can just see it affecting them. Like you said, 2 losses, one as a stranger against Wolves. I just see it hurting them a little bit now. Whereas Spurs are on the coming out of that side of things. They're getting their players back. I think it's very interesting. I think it's, like I said, goals.
Yeah, I've got this down as goals for sure. I've got this over 4.5 goals. Actually, I think this could be really interesting. I still think that actually, your point about Spurs when they come back. Kulusevski's now out, which is obviously a bit of a backward step. However, Spurs still
the end of the world though, because
no.
his form was starting to dip because of how often that he'd been played. So, not to say he's out injured, so he's getting a rest, but he's going to be rested. I think it's not serious, by the way.
The rumour is that he'll be back after the international break, so he's out till then.
Yeah, so probably perfect just to give him a breather. And there is players in that squad. Let's say James Maddison slotting into the 10. He looks to have been injured, had a bit of a rest, and he looks to have come back in good form. I think there's Brennan Johnson as well on the wing. I like Mattel up front. I think there's some good players there, and probably is the best thing that give Kulusevski a break because bless him, he's been carrying Spurs on his back, hasn't he, through the injury crisis. So probably not the end of the world.
No, but what I would just caveat this with is that Spurs do still have a European game to get through before this game, and that could have a massive impact on where this goes because obviously
Spurs at home.
Spurs are away in the first leg.
Because if they're at home, you can sort of take the full squad and it not have too much effect on you with travel. But it'd be interesting to see the squad that they take, whether they do keep a few of them at home just to give them a rest and not take them.
They've all gone. So Van der Ven, Solanke, Romero. The only one that hasn't gone is obviously Kulusevski because obviously injured. And it'll be interesting to see what they do with those players. But you just, even a player that hasn't been injured, if I was a Spurs fan, I'd be thinking every game we play is an opportunity for somebody to get injured, somehow, some way, some shape or form that we weren't expecting. And so actually, yes, Spurs are starting to get their team back. But again, similarly to we spoke about Aston Villa, if I was Ange Postecoglou and I've got to win one of the next 2 games, I'd be making sure it was in the Europa League, not in the Premier League, because in all due respect, they're not going to get particularly much higher in the Premier League. They're not going down now. Go win the Europa League.
Similar to Everton, they're irrelevant in the Premier League. They're not going down, not going to be challenging for Europe. All focus should be on the Europa League. I agree.
But you're right in the Zabani absence is a big one for Bournemouth. Again, we spoke about this a lot this season, and I think actually I even listening to Carlo Ancelotti talking because they lost at the weekend, and he was talking about how do you expect us to win when we're missing so many players. I hope what comes out of this journey, and of course it's very relevant with the Spurs conversation, is that we actually start to factor in that if a team is missing a bunch of players, there's a chance that their performance levels drop. And actually, because I just feel like there was a period where we weren't allowed to talk about teams missing players, which seems a little bit weird. But actually, hopefully, as we move forward, we can actually just say, the team probably aren't as good as they could be because they are missing 6 of their first team players.
It's a real common trend theme that's been running through the Premier League this season, isn't it? You look at Arsenal, you look at Man City, losing Rodri. There's lots, probably with the exception of Liverpool, every team has been affected by some serious injury to their players, which has massively halted the performance.
But we weren't allowed to talk again. Postecoglou became a laughing joke, and Spurs became a laughing joke around talking about how many players they had missing. And then it was only then when the Arsenal fans, and again, where I live, you're generally speaking, there are some Chelsea, but your Spurs, Arsenal, maybe Watford, etc. The Arsenal fans were telling the Spurs fans to shut up, moaning about players missing, tough luck, get on with it, until they started losing players, and now that's reversed. And like every club is at it about other clubs until you. I guess my point is that I hope everybody just kind of goes. Even if you just said this is a good time to play Tottenham because they're missing 5 of their first team players, seems like a really realistic conversation to have, rather than this kind of bluffing that you can't talk about players that aren't playing. You know, I don't know. I just feel like
Do you know what I think the consensus that has come out of that is, though? Because what people were saying about Spurs is, if you look at the 11 that are playing, it still should be good enough to beat it. But they weren't then factoring in how many games they were playing and they're not at 100%, which actually I think has brought, that conversation around players are playing too many games. Then you factor in the injuries and how many the Spurs players especially have played. I think people have started to realise that you can't be at 100%.
But and again, if football fans can become a little bit more sensible through the process of this season, because of whoever's injury crisis is, like I say, at any level of, yourself, you play for a team. If you take your 5 best players out, or not even your 5 best players, if you take your goalkeeper, your centre back, your centre midfielder, and your centre forward out, there's a chance you lose against the Dog and Duck or the Disco Dave's FC. It doesn't matter what level of football you're at. Again, go back to last night. Take one player out of that Liverpool team, Alisson, they lose that game.
Yep, agreed, 100%.
And we should be able to have that open and honest conversation, because that's why we pay £120 million for a player, because they're that good that they make the team better. Otherwise, what's the freaking point? But I believe that this is going to be an entertaining game, one way or t'other. And I think there will be over 4.5 goals in that game on Sunday. On the flip side of that, we travel to Super Sunday to Old Trafford, and I've got a feeling this one could be a tough watch, Fran. I know that Arsenal have just come off the back of a very heavy win, which gives them, of course, next week off in terms of their through. That they can play a different team, give even more youngsters a chance. I just got a feeling this one could be a tough watch on Sunday afternoon, because Man United are going to try and make this as difficult as they possibly can, because they're in a sticky position and don't want to get pumped. And I think this could be quite a low-scoring affair.
Yeah, I've just looked at. I fancy Arsenal to win. I think United are so poor, and then I've just looked at the price, and Arsenal are 3-4, and I've thought that's a really good price for Arsenal coming off the back of 7-1. However, what then stuck in my mind is United seem to have picked up when they've been challenged by better teams. So I haven't put them in my £5 challenge for that reason, because it wouldn't surprise me if United do step up like they did against City, like they did against Liverpool. I can see them actually stepping their performance up, because it's a big game and it's a rivalry. However, Arsenal are a better team. Yes, they're lacking goals a minute. Again, it sounds strange coming off the back of 7, but they don't have that centre forward. I can just see Arsenal being too clever and, winning the game comfortably, but not from the sense of scoring too many goals. I think they'll just control the game. I can't see how United score against them. The only player in the United team that looks to have any threat whatsoever is Garnacho, and he seems to either be on the bench or getting dragged at half time. So I can't see how they score. Yeah,
no, I've actually got this to. Again, I didn't put that. Maybe put that in as well. Maybe we put that in as well. Arsenal to 0. That might make that a bit more interesting, mightn't it? Let's see if we can do that whilst we're going. Yeah, like I say, I think I can't lie. I was very, very surprised at the Champions League result. Not that Arsenal won, but that they found 7 goals.
I was surprised that they won. I was looking at him. Was it PSV?
Yeah.
They were 3-1, and I was thinking that's a decent price against a team that have been really struggling to score goals at home, which I didn't back it, luckily, because that 7-1 would have been probably the worst bet ever. But I looked at that and I thought they could really struggle there, because PSV aren't a bad side, and when you're struggling to score goals, where's the win coming from? But let's be honest, that 7 is going to give them so much confidence, which is why I've probably got a bit more confidence in this prediction now after that. Because the forwards, which were bang out of form, now will their confidence be sky high, because the goals were shared around as well, weren't they?
Yeah, absolutely. And again, we spoke earlier about the Brighton manager sort of evolving. Like Arteta has to evolve. Like, if you haven't got players, you have to find a different way of playing. You have to find different solutions. There was a period of time where they, felt like every time they took a corner, they were scoring from, and that's now been sussed out, and other teams have copied them. And so you've got to evolve again. Like, football is, like we spoke about 4-4-2 or sort of 2 pressing with a 2. Like, the game just keeps evolving, and you've always got to be thinking of, what can I do? Like, I'm missing player X. What solution can I find? It doesn't have to be a player in that same role. You can create the different shapes, different formations to kind of create opportunities for yourselves. And I thought it was a good evolution for Arteta in his progress as a manager to get that result off the back of some adaptations that he's made.
Yeah, like, and I agree with you entirely there. It's been up to Arteta to try and tweak it a fraction. So he doesn't have to go four up front or what 6 at the back. It doesn't have to be huge changes of tactics. It just needs to be tweaks in styles, doesn't it? And I thought you did start to see that a little bit more. Odegaard, rather than dropping deeper, seemed to be trying to join in with the attack a bit more. Like, yeah, I agree. I thought he made some tweaks there that made the difference, and it has been a long time coming. To be honest, there have been, like you said, with this game, pretty boring to watch. They've been very predictable, haven't they, really, of how they're going to play. So, yeah, I agree with you. I don't think this is going to be a great watch, to be honest. I'd much sooner be watching Spurs-Bournemouth.
Yeah, for sure. I think entertainment-wise, I think that there's no doubt that will be a more again.
Yeah.
You know,
I've done your treble, by the way. It's 10
so
to
far,
1. 10 and a
yeah,
half to 1.
yeah. I just did that as well. Yeah, I was going to do that. So yeah, so 10.5 to 1. Chelsea, Liverpool, Arsenal to win to nil. £5 returns 57.75.
£35 challenge.
Sorry,
Going for it.
no, I've got a different one that's going to return more. I don't like the win to nil. There's so many teams now that can get a luck. Whatever. Like I said, I just think that to win to nil was a risk. But so I've got, interestingly, I have got some of them in my £5 challenge. We end the match week at the London Stadium Monday, 8 p.m. live on Sky Sports. West Ham host Newcastle, and my prediction has changed dramatically based on Newcastle looking like they. Well, not some of this is looking like some of this is for sure. Lewis Hall's out for the season. Anthony Gordon suspended, and of course it looks like Isak has picked up an injury as well. And so for me now, this becomes a different result to what we were talking. And we've just spoken about how fans need to get a grip of what a team looks like when they've had some injuries. For me, this is a prime example of how, and again, of course, it happened to Newcastle last season when they had loads of injuries, is when they're at full strength, they are in a very, very good spot. But take those key players out, and it looks like a different team altogether.
Yeah, I mean, I did my predictions. I'm sure it was yesterday morning, and then Lewis Hall was available. I wasn't aware about Isak, so I did have Newcastle just edging it because even though West Ham were very comfortable against Leicester, I wasn't massively impressed by the way they're playing. They looked relatively solid, but didn't seem to be very similar to the Potter Brighton team where they played the ball around nicely, but the cutting edge didn't seem to be there. So I can't see there being goals. So on that front, I have changed my prediction, and it might be a little bit bold, but I can't see where the goals are coming from now from both teams.
So sorry, I'm just trying to frantically before we go to giving people duff information. I'm frantically trying to get a sense of. So it's saying that there is a chance that he plays as he was training on Wednesday. So there is a chance he plays.
Yeah, I mean, I know fantasy's nothing to go by, but so I'm looking and Mateta is down as 25 chance of playing. Isak's got nothing against him, so it looks like he's fit and ready to go, which you'd have thought if there was some news out, it would have put it into the fantasy.
But you still look at, kind of for me, Lewis Hall was becoming a big part of the attacking output of what Newcastle did. I mean, obviously he was fantastic in the previous game. You look at Anthony Gordon, who creates the spaces for Isak. Isak actually didn't.
He's the biggest one, I think, out there. Obviously, Isak being the goal scorer, but let's say he's playing. Gordon's the one. He's the threat, isn't he? He's the one that stretches teams, creates the space in behind. I think he's going to be a massive, massive miss.
And of course, misses the cup final, which, if ever that's a way to kill a game. Of course, that's one sure way to do it. It looks like that's going to be an absolute shoo-in for Liverpool now. The other side of this coin, we'll talk about West Ham. Obviously, news has broken this week about the Paqueta court case.
Has it? So go on. I've not heard this. Go on. You can update me.
Well, so the court case has now been scheduled in, and the FA are going for a lifetime ban.
Oh, what?
So that's
lifetime.
They've scheduled it for. It could be the longest ever trial of a footballer. They reckon it could take up to 3 weeks.
So that'll be him and the Millwall keeper banned for life.
And in no particular order. And the FA are going for a lifetime. Now, I don't know whether that's a lifetime kind of across all, or whether just a lifetime in England. I don't know what that ban entails because obviously we're not there yet. But the date has been set.
Excessive, doesn't it?
I don't know, man. I don't know. It's difficult, isn't it? When we moan, or certainly you more than me because you get closer to me, but sort of moan about the betting companies and their kind of sway and what does count as an assist. And we were talking about Jared Bowen's goal in the last game, and it got taken off him, and then it was you wonder whether the betting companies are putting pressure on them, because obviously this was a way of fixing that, and they want to kind of stamp that out. I don't know.
But I mean, I try and look at other sports, and you look at boxers that are taking performance enhancing drugs. They're literally putting the opposition's life on the line by doing that, and they don't. Most of the case, don't get lifetime bans. Like you get a 2-year ban, and then they come back. It's not impacting people's lives, as in like physical wise. I think that's massively excessive. Yes, there should be a punishment for effectively fixing matches, but not to the extent to ban him for life. I mean, that's ridiculous.
Well, we obviously don't know whether it will happen or not, but that's what they're pushing for. It's common knowledge. It's out there. Like I say, I don't know anybody in the FA, so I definitely can't claim to be having any inside information whatsoever. Because obviously, and I don't know whether he can actually play whilst the hearing's going on. I don't actually know whether he's able
honest,
to.
we're using this word a lot, aren't we? He's been irrelevant this season. He's not. He's not even really featured, has he? He's been very, very poor. Looking from a player that could have gone to Man City, he can hardly get in West Ham's team.
Yeah, you wonder about the emotional burden of that hanging over, don't you? You kind of think, is he being squished? And actually, on the flip side of that, someone that's come back and he's starting to look like the player he was. James Ward-Prowse has come back into the setup and starting to look like a decent option for West Ham. And actually, I felt at the time it was a bit of a weird decision to let him go out, because actually, if there's any team in the country that used to be great at set pieces, it was West Ham. So actually, for them to get James Ward-Prowse back in the squad, actually, I think is a bit of a no-brainer. And that kind of, I guess, for want of a better word, that sort of meat and two veg type of a player is actually what sort of West Ham are known for. They need more of them for me.
He dropped off the face of the earth, hadn't he, James Ward-Prowse? From being Southampton's main player, being a very good player. I'm sure he got into the England setup as well. Like, he just didn't feature. He went to Forest, didn't he, on loan? Like, didn't feature at all. So, yeah, to get him back and fire, like, he's a good player. And like I said, I think he's, players are suited to certain clubs and styles, aren't they? And I think he does fit the West Ham style down to a T.
Yeah, and obviously, Graham Potter starting to get his feet under the table, obviously giving some youngsters a go. Ollie Skulls is starting to look like a tidy little option in there as well. Obviously, Andy Irving's another player that I hadn't really heard much about as well. So, it's starting to see some different players making that team, and potentially for West Ham, he could be saving himself some money in the summer if he can get these guys into the squad and actually be functioning in the system that he's trying to play.
Well, we've been talking about academies for a while, aren't they? And they said, I know quite a few players from academies just don't seem to be coming through. But when you do look at some of the England youth setups, and you look at some of the players that are coming through there, it does baffle me how they're not getting even into match day squads. And I mean, one that I know, I look at some of the Leicester players that are in the academies, not even getting in a match day squad where you can't score a goal at home for 6 days is just baffling. When you've got the Premier League 2's top goal scorer in there, he's not even in the squad. So, full praise to Graham Potter for utilising the academy, because you look at it from a PSR perspective, it's the way that you need to operate now. One, to bolster your squad with players for free because you've developed them, but two, if you sell them, it's pure profit, which means you can improve the squad and stay compliant. So, yeah, full praise to him, because I think that's what all clubs, especially of the level of West Ham, underneath the top 6, you have to be going down that route. Because if you're not, what are you doing with your academy? What's it there for? Serving zero purpose.
And let's not forget that West Ham used to be known as
exactly
the academy. And so, look, they've had 2 great results. Again, I'm gonna throw West Ham in the Everton and Tottenham bracket of irrelevant. They're safe, they're calm. For me now, it's about setting those building blocks in place for the summer. Pick up as many points, make sure the players understand the system, so that next season you get a good run at it. Because I'm pretty confident that Potter will be back again in the summer. Then they're going to need to do some jiggery pokery and let some players go, of course. But West Ham backed the manager last year. I think if they back Potter this summer, I think actually you could see West Ham start to go a little bit higher up the food chain and get back to some form of glory. But again, a really interesting way to finish off the game week. So we swing all the way back to Saturday 12:30 at the City Ground, Nottingham Forest versus City. Sorry, I should say Manchester City in this case, shouldn't I? The score will be, Fran.
I'm going to go for Forest 1, Man City 3.
I thought we were going to do the same as we did last week. Get excited, let's start going, we did the same. I've gone 1-2. I think that Manchester City will, Nottingham Forest will make hard work for Manchester, but I think they will have enough in the end. So 1-2. Brighton host Fulham at the American Express Stadium at 3 o'clock Saturday. The score will be
Brighton 2, Fulham 1.
Magic Star. Yep, 2-1 Brighton. I don't know what that noise was that I just made there, so apologies everybody. But nonetheless, I got that excited that we had the same score because we said that moving forward that we'll put a little separate bet on whenever we do this. So still at 3:00, Selhurst Park, Crystal Palace host Ipswich, and the score is going to be.
I am banking on Mateta starting here, so I'm going to go Palace 2, Ipswich 0.
Oh, I started to mark it as a golden nugget, but I went 2-1. I see Liam. Do you know what? I haven't made a mistake once today. I'm just going to call him Liam moving forward. I see Liam scoring. He looked good to me. We know this one's To Nil, which is the case of how many they score in. Liverpool host Southampton at Anfield. Still 3:00 on Saturday. The score will be
4-0.
I went 3-0. I see Liverpool actually slowing down with some goals, actually. And I also think that they might take their foot off the gas if they do get that point because they've got some big games coming up. So I've gone 3-0. Saturday night, 5:30 at the G-Tech Community Stadium. I say it every week just for you. Brentford host Aston Villa, which I think will be a high-scoring affair. I've gone over 3.5 goals, but the score will be?
I've gone for 1-1.
I've gone 2-2. So we can call it a draw, though, right? So I've gone Desmond. So, yep, 2-2 there. And I've put it as my banker of the week. So we know that I'm going for Everton to win. But at Molineux, 8 p.m. kickoff, Wolverhampton Wanderers host Everton. The score will be, Fran?
I think we've got this one the same. 0-1.
We haven't. I've gone 1-2.
Oh, okay.
I've gone 1-2. I think Everton are a little bit more attacking than that now. I think that they're a little bit more exciting than that. I think we might have gone the same on this one, though. So we go to Stamford Bridge, 2:00 Sunday. Chelsea host Leicester, and the score will be?
4-0.
Oh, I've gone 3-0. You went high. So in that case, then, if you're going 4-0, why don't you go over 3.5 goals in Chelsea just to kind of crank up the odds?
It's banker, though, isn't it? You've got to play it a bit safe.
All right, there, boy, no problem. This one's going to be interesting. This could be anything. Who knows? At the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium, remember, we're only allowed to call them Spurs or Tottenham Hotspur. The score will be against Bournemouth.
2-2.
I've gone 2-3. With Patrick Clark, not Patrick. There you go.
Hey!
You clown. Moving on, plonker. I think you know where I was going with it. Clive at the score. Fucking idiot. Sorry, excuse the language. Manchester United host Arsenal at 4:30 at Old Trafford. The score will be?
Manchester United 0, Arsenal 2.
That's exactly what I've got. 0-2. So we've only got two exactly the same so far. And last but not least, we come to Monday night at the London Stadium. West Ham host Newcastle. The score will be?
This is the one I've changed my mind on just now. I have gone for 0-0.
Oh, God, don't tune in, people. I've gone 2-1 West Ham. I think that West Ham at home on a Monday night, again, like I say, Newcastle missing a few bits and pieces. I think they could struggle, and I think West Ham will just have enough at home. So we come on to we do it every week. We've spoken about the Win to Nil challenge, but we do a £5 challenge every week. You have gone for?
I've gone for a 5-fold.
Yep,
I've gone for Man City, Brighton, Palace, Liverpool and Chelsea. Now, the Palace one is a bit dodgy now if Mateta doesn't start, but I'm going to stick with them. £5 pays back £38.
So I've got 5 teams. I've got City, Palace and Liverpool. But I've also added, to make this far more juicy, Everton and Arsenal, and that returns £71.80.
Nice.
So nearly doubling the money for Everton and Arsenal to be added to that. And I think, ironically, they're probably, like you say, Palace seems to be the risky one there. As always, Fran, we've gone over a little bit, quite a lot, actually. Blimey, bad hosting today, sorry. I would say my favourite hour of the week, but it's my favourite hour and 15 of the week. But where can people find us, Fran? Where can they reach out and speak to us?
So people can find us on social media, on X, on Facebook or on TikTok. Please follow us. Send us any DMs if you want to come on the pod, interact with our posts. If you want to listen to the episode, we're on Spotify, we're on Apple Podcasts, and we're also on YouTube. Again, if you could just follow those channels, give us a thumbs up, a like, whether it's a rating, that would really appreciate that. It just helps us grow the pod. And I have got just a quick quiz question for you.
Do it. So, for me?
Well,
for them.
I'll let you have a guess of some of the players. So a couple of minutes, you can have a guess. So the question is, In the current season of the Premier League, who are the top 10 players to have had the most touches of the ball? So what I'll do is I'll run you through the club that they play for, and then you can have a guess. So we'll start with 10, Brighton.
Lewis Dunk.
No.
Lee, Van Hecker.
Van Hecker. 9, Chelsea.
Cole Palmer.
Nope, he's not in the list. With a lot of these players, you'd think sort of midfield players would be in there. Generally, they tend to be defenders.
Yeah, I was going to say it's be defenders. Yeah. Levi Colwill.
Levi Colwill is second.
Oh, Jesus Christ, I wouldn't have had that.
Yeah. So there's a Chelsea player at 9. 8 is a Liverpool player.
Well, based on that logic, we'll go with... Well, I would have said... So off the bat, Van Dijk would have been my first choice.
Van Dijk's had the most touches in the Premier League.
I wouldn't have said that high, but he would have been in my 10.
Yeah.
But off the back of that, then I don't think Konate. So I'm going to go with Trent.
Trent is 8. 7 is a Manchester United player.
Really?
Trend a little bit.
Have they got anybody? Well, it can only be.
He's him picking the ball out the net.
Off the back of. I don't think the defenders have been in the team long. I think there's been some changes at the back there. The only player that's
plays most weeks.
Yeah, it can only be Bruno.
It's Bruno, yeah. Next is an Arsenal player.
Well, then I'll say Declan Rice.
No. Defender.
Gabriel.
Go again.
Saliba.
Yeah, there you go. Next is a Fulham player. Think about where they attack the most.
Well, yeah, Anderson hasn't played much. I don't think it's Calvin Bassey. I don't know that their midfield have been.
No, where did they attack down? What flank did it?
The left.
Yeah.
The left.
So
well, you're saying the left back, Robinson?
Yes. Aston Villa player.
John McGinn.
Very similar.
John McGinn. Well, the other player that plays in there is Tielemans.
Tielemans is 4th. 3rd is a Man City player.
I would have said John Stones, but I'm not going to say John Stones. I would have said Diaz, but I can't say Diaz. The only player at the back that's played, I think, every game is Gvardiol.
Gvardiol is 3rd. So that leaves you, obviously, 2nd is Colwell. Van Dijk is 1st.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? Like, in terms of...
You'd think someone like a Cole Palmer would have the most touches and stuff, but generally, yeah, it's defenders.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's interesting.
And the exception of Onana, who's picked the ball out his net 3,455 times this season.
There's no need for that. And sorry, Manchester United fans, please send all complaints to.
I'm not sorry.
Please send all frustrations to the Atmosphere Electric podcast on X, quoting Fran's name when you're giving him abuse. But Fran,
you'll get a lovely response back from me. Fighting response.
As always, mate, really enjoyed it. Thank you very much. Look forward to speaking to you next week. See how we then come through. Well done, bud.